Flying to Disney World from the UK, the airport you choose could save you hours of travel time and even hundreds of pounds. But is Orlando really the best choice? Or should you consider Tampa instead?
Now my wheels in motion and my windows open with the wind blowing in my hair. I'm driving down the highway, gonna do this my way. I can feel it in the air. Here I
go! Up until our most recent trip, when we go to Walt Disney World, we would always book the flight to MCO. And I think a lot of that is to do with when we were staying on site, we had the Magical Express, which would then you'd arrive at Orlando Airport, get on the bus, and it will take you to your resort. But obviously that's now gone. Yes, it's been replaced by sort of Mears Connect. But it didn't have the same magical feeling. So maybe it's something. So in 2025, is Orlando still the best choice when you're choosing a trip to Walt Disney World? With Tampa, apparently 90 minutes away, depends on what route you take. Going through my experience.
It sometimes depends on which route you take coming out of Orlando as to how quick you can get there. Like,
but which one gives you the better start to your holiday from experience and actually gets you ready for that time? Would you choose Orlando or Tampa? And let us know why. So Claire, as you mentioned earlier, you've been bugging me for years saying we should go to Tampa. So, and we finally did it.
So it's interesting because we ended up going into Tampa, probably I think the first time we did that was like 2016, 2017. And it just so happened that there was a massive saving on that route. And I think, there are glitches and there are opportunities to find savings on all flight, routes. And we found one to Tampa. And I really remember the first time we arrived at Tampa Airport, because obviously having been into Orlando International a few times, there's the carpet and then there's Hi, it's Buddy Dyer on the monorail and all of that stuff. And it really and the smell of Orlando International, I think anyone who's flown into it knows, that atmosphere that you get. And I really remember going into Tampa and feeling it was different. But for me, at that point, it was a really good different. The new, so they hadn't refurbished the whole of the main terminal building at that point to how it looks now. But I remember getting off the plane and we disembarked and we walked through the exit, we got off and we walked through, and there was a woman there saying hello to everyone and giving out to the kids, and I've still got it somewhere, a pencil with a little rubber, which is an aeroplane shape on the top, that said "Welcome to Tampa," and she gave one to Millie, and Millie was over the moon with this pencil and aeroplane rubber. And actually, I think my immediate reaction was, well, you wouldn't get that in Orlando. I think I said that at the time. And everyone was smiley and welcome. And we got to immigration, and it was a time where there was the booths and you had to do the thing and the fingers. And then you went to, someone got the X on the bit of paper and you had to go and queue up. And so we got to the immigration person, and they were nice. They chatted to us. They smiled. They were pleasant. There was a really different atmosphere in the immigration hall, where I think my experience until then in Orlando and also JFK had been really quite
abrupt.
I don't know if abrupt is fair. I think just really busy, efficient, professional. And that's not to say that they weren't busy, efficient and professional, just they did it with a smile. And that made such a difference when you've been on a 9-hour flight. And then we got through and our bags were waiting for us. And yes, they had the sniffer dogs that were cute, all of the stuff that happens. And there was just something different at Tampa. Yeah. And then we got the little monorail to the main terminal building. It was bright, it was sunny, it was airy, and it was clean. And it didn't feel like you were being funneled in with a million other people. So yeah, there was something about that experience. And then on the return journey home, we had a really positive experience where we checked in, got the bags, and then I said, knowing what it's like in Orlando. I said, how long will security take us? Thinking this is going to be like 45 minutes security. And she went, 2 or 3 minutes. I was like, what? And it
We were
literally
through in
was
5.
however long it took us to walk through a few switchbacks and then straight through. And it was such a lovely, friendly airport that it has since then remained. And I've flown into lots of airports in the US. It has remained my favorite airport in all of mainland America. Definitely.
To be honest with you, Claire, and actually I'm going to put this out there because actually I think it's worth talking about, but the atmosphere in most places on that west coast of Florida, I don't know whether it's because everyone is just chilled, friendly, and if you were ever thinking of going exploring, and heading out to that west coast is the most amazing place. There's some amazing beaches, some amazing islands, and you get an absolute welcome no matter where you go. And I think that really needs to be made apparent to a lot of people who you kind of get shrunk into that. I'm going to Orlando. I stay there and I don't move on anywhere else.
The drive is about an hour and 10 minutes. I've done it in just over an hour. I've also done it in an hour and 45, depending on the traffic through Tampa and what time you land. But effectively to Walt Disney World, it's about an hour and 10-minute drive.
Yeah.
But based on the fact, if you were to take an average time allowance, so if you were to fly into Orlando International, land at the A or B gate, stand in the queue to go through immigration, which for us is an issue. It might not be if you're from mainland US. Or you're doing an indirect flight and you've done immigration somewhere else, it might not be so much of a problem. But if you're
and then
flying
you still have to wait for your bags at a certain point in a certain terminal.
And they might be wet when they get there. But it can take an hour to an hour and a half to get through Orlando International. Whereas in Tampa, by the time if you were to go to then the Mears Connect bus and wait for your bus, you're then going to wait there and for someone else to wait for the bus, and then everyone else get on it and get to your resort. My experience is in Tampa, you land, you get off the flight, you go through immigration in about 15 minutes, even without the NPC app. Your bags are usually waiting for you by the time you got out. They're not wet because it hasn't been storming. You can get to your rental car in about 10 to 15 minutes. So within about 45 minutes of getting off the flight, or disembarking the plane,
that's exactly on your way. We were in the car in 45 minutes from the plane. We had
and then it's an hour drive, hour and 15-minute drive. It's actually sometimes works out quicker to fly to Tampa to get to your resort than it does to fly into Orlando, which makes no sense at all.
We went through like 4 or 5 different storms, unfortunately, that evening when we landed. But
you landed quite late, didn't you?
We did. Well, actually, only 6:30.
So were you driving the storms as you were driving into Orlando? Or were they?
Yeah, there were storms going. Yeah, there was so once we got into Tampa, it was dry, but in the distance you could see the storms that moved through Tampa and were heading towards Orlando.
That bit of road, it's not the most interesting piece of road to drive along.
No.
But it's functional.
I'm just glad I found cruise control on the car, and I was like, good. and the thing is, it is literally just a straight road. I've got a map here.
Yeah. You can't go wrong.
So it is literally, if you can see that on your phone.
You really can't go wrong.
No.
Unless you go the wrong way out the airport.
There are 2 signs.
In Orlando as well.
There are 2 signs that say 275.
Yeah.
And it was like, without any sat nav, north and south, got them confused. But it was quite pretty with the sun setting, and it was good.
Yeah.
But in comparison to like Orlando, it says 19 minutes.
I have never done it in 19.
No way. Yeah.
Like, this must be Google in the middle of the night. But yeah.
So, no,
it also depends on where you're getting to in Walt Disney World, because Walt Disney World's quite large. So
and also depends if you go the north or the south exit out of MCO. So I've done
what terminal you're going into as well.
So I've done Terminal C, south exit to Coronado in 23 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's the quickest I've ever done it. And that was going down the expressway, which is apparently unironically named.
What I also liked, going to Tampa, we didn't have to pay any tolls.
No, there's no tolls.
And to Orlando, we had to pay tolls. So that's another thing to think about. You just don't have to think. It's just, and when you're using your phone as your sat nav, just put avoid tolls and whatever route it takes you. I don't know.
I don't worry about the tolls. I deal with it after I get it back.
It's because Dan pays for it.
It just gets charged to a card about a month later, by which point I've forgotten about it and it's happened. I just can't be bothered.
Yeah. It's one of those things to worry. It's like John's completely disagreeing there.
No, John's like, get my visitor toll pass for $10. Hang it on my windscreen. I'm gonna get my money. Yeah.
But that's only in Orlando. That's
can't do that.
Is.
That's because there aren't any in Tampa.
Yeah.
So if you've enjoyed the show as much as I have, please give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to share this show out.
Now my wheels in motion and my